Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is When Gamers Talk. Today we will be breaking down the top 5 reasons to support the allowance of the death penalty. The death penalty is responsible for about 46 deaths per year and is a hot button issue in the United States. This video should be pretty quick, so let's just hop right into it. The Constitution allows the application of the death penalty. By 1972, challenges to the Eighth Amendment in the U.S. had prompted the suspension of the state's death punishment framework as unconstitutional, which could, as drafted, prompt arbitrary sentences. The states immediately started to battle, redesigning their essential laws to address the issues featured by the Supreme Court. The death punishment was effectively re-established in 1977 when the primary execution was completed. Therefore, the death punishment was tested, and it was determined that it was needed to reformulate and that it was viewed as legal and constitutional. Anton Scalia, former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, in a concurring opinion in Glossop v. Gross, stated that petitioners sentenced to die for the crimes they committed, including, in the case of one petitioner, since put to death, raping and murdering an 11-month-old baby, come before this court asking us to nullify their sentences as cruel and unusual under the Eighth Amendment. They rely on this provision because it is the only provision they can rely on. They were charged by a sovereign state with murder. They were afforded counsel and tried before a jury of their peers. Tried twice, once to determine whether they were guilty and once to determine whether death was the appropriate sentence. They were duly convicted and sentenced. Not once in the history of the American Republic has this court ever suggested that the death penalty is categorically impermissible. The reason is obvious. It is impossible to hold unconstitutional that which the Constitution explicitly contemplates. The Fifth Amendment provides that no person shall be held to answer for a capital crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, and that no person shall be deprived of life without due process of law. Historically, the Eighth Amendment was understood to bar only those punishments that added terror, pain, or disgrace to an otherwise permissible capital sentence. I would not presume to tell parents whose life has been forever altered by the brutal murder of a child that life imprisonment isn't punishment enough. I would just like to remind everyone to show your support for the channel. Every single like, comment, and second of your day you spend on my channel is a blessing, and it helps me reach more and more audiences around the world. That being said, don't forget to subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on the video down below in the comments. Do you believe that the death penalty should be allowed? Why or why not? The idea that a punishment should fit its crime. We have the responsibility to punish those who deserve it, but only to the degree they deserve it. Retributivists do not justify the death penalty by the general deterrence or safety it brings us, and we reject over-punishing no less than under-punishing. How obscene that aggravated murderers who behave well inside prison watch movies and play softball. Regardless of future benefits, we justify punishments because it's deserved. Let the punishment fit the crime. Opponents of the death penalty wrongly equate retribution and revenge, because they both would inflict pain and suffering on those who have inflicted pain and suffering on us. Whereas revenge knows no bounds. Retribution must be limited, proportional, and appropriately directed. The retributive punishment fits the crime. We should only execute those who most deserve it and not randomly. Refine our death penalty statutes and review the sentences of everyone on death row. Release into general population those who don't really deserve to die. The rest we should execute. Worst first. This is a quote from Robert Blecker, JD, Professor of Law at New York Law School. Deterrence. Some crimes are so heinous and inherently wrong that they demand strict penalties, up to and including life sentences or even death. Most Americans recognize this principle as just. Studies of the death penalty have reached various conclusions about its effectiveness in deterring crime. But the majority of studies that track effects over many years and across states or countries find a deterrent effect. Indeed, other recent investigations, using a variety of samples and statistical methods, consistently demonstrate a strong link between executions and reduced murder rates. In short, capital punishment does in fact save lives. This is a quote from David Mulhausen, PhD, Research Fellow and Empirical Policy Analyst at the Heritage Foundation. While most studies that show any deterrent effect of the death penalty have been disregarded by major social scientists, I do not believe that deterrence is something that we can just write off as something that has no effect on society. Closure for victims' families. A story told by Kermit Alexander, former NFL player and president of the NFL Players Association, stated, "Whatever your feelings are toward the death penalty, one thing most people will never understand is the pain experienced when a family member, or in my case, family members, are brutally tortured and murdered. In 1984, my mother, sister, and 2 nephews were cold-heartedly shot to death by an 18-year-old gang member named Tyquan Cox. Tyquan was sentenced to death by a jury of his peers and has been on death row for 30 years, after exhausting all of his appeals at both the state and federal level. Cox, while on death row, attempted a violent takeover of the Supermax Adjustment Center at San Quentin with a goal to kill as many guards as possible. I urge a no vote on Prop 62 and yes on Prop 66 to ensure the worst of the worst killers receive the strongest sentences. A yes on Prop 66 brings closure to families while saving California taxpayers millions of dollars every year." Morality. Edward Fieser, Ph.D., Associate Professor of Philosophy at Pasadena City College, and Joseph M. Bessett, Ph.D., Professor of Government and Ethics at Claremont McKenna College, stated, "We reserve the death penalty in the United States for the most heinous murders and the most brutal and conscienceless murders. This is not, as some critics argue, a kind of state-run lottery that randomly chooses an unlucky few for the ultimate penalty from among all those convicted of murder. Rather, the capital punishment system is a filter that selects the worst of the worst. Put another way, to sentence killers like those described above to less than death would fail to do justice because the penalty, presumably a long period in prison, would be grossly disproportionate to the heinousness of the crime. Prosecutors, jurors, and the loved ones of the murder victims understand this essential point. Perhaps most importantly, in its supreme gravity, the death penalty promotes belief in and respect for the majesty of the moral order and for the system of human law that both derives from and supports that moral order." Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you made it this far, just leave a comment letting me know what your favorite type of pizza is so that I know who all is making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you learned something more about the death penalty that you didn't know beforehand. Don't forget to check out the second part of this series that will be out on Saturday. And last but definitely not least, God bless.